Om Shri Sadgurave Namaha. I bow down at the holy lotus feet of true Guru, whose words of wisdom are like mighty sunbeams to dispel the darkness of ignorance. Guru, the beneficence personified, takes the disciple to meet the Supreme Being. I offer my humblest obeisance again and again to such a benevolent Guru. Blessed is Guru, whose glory is indescribable in words. Whatever little I could or would say is only because of his compassionate grace. Oh, hello viewers. Namaste, Jai Guru, Radha Swami, Satyaram Shah, Sahib Bandagi, Vahe Guru. Welcome to Satsang Talks on Santmat in English. This is the 11th episode of this series of talks. In the previous session, we had discussed an answer to a question or query raised by one of our respectable listeners regarding light being invisible and God being the light who illuminates this whole of creation. Before that, in the ninth episode of the talks, we had discussed why God cannot be seen first in the outside world. We had explored the various regions. We had tried to find the veracity of the statement as to if that statement is true, and if yes, why so. Now, once it is established that it is not possible to see God, to realize, to perceive, to find God first in the outside world, the question remains then where to look for Him. In the 11th talk of this series, we are going to address this question. Before that, let me share my screen with you. I hope the screen is visible to all of you. As already said, this is the 11th episode of the talks since we started. And as usual, we'll be first doing a brief recapitulation of whatever was discussed in the 9th talk. As I said, 10th talk was dedicated to clarification of a query raised by one of our respectable audiences. And having recapitulated the salient points that were discussed in the 9th episode, we'll proceed to see that if not outside, then where to find Him. So let us first proceed with the recap. In the 9th session, we had seen that even though God is all pervading, He is omnipresent, and that is why he is also there in the outside world. Why he cannot be realized first in the outside world? Why so? What are the reasons therefore? Therefore, and in response to that, we had started with asking another question, that is, do we see all the things that we know very much exist? And we find that there are so many instances that can be seen around us where we know for sure that those things exist, yet we are not able to directly perceive them, to detect their presence, to have their first hand direct knowledge. We had seen that why it is so, because all our knowledge of the outside universe is derived through our senses or our sensory organs, which are five in number: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. And we had seen that our senses are very much limited in their capability of perception. And they are not able even to perceive the things we know for certain are there around us. For example, we had seen that we cannot see air. We can touch air, but we cannot see space, and we cannot detect its presence through any of our sensory organs. Though we know that space exists, because where the space not to exist, where we will exist, where we will stay, where all this universe will be accommodated. So therefore, though space is there and we know it is there, still any of our senses are incapable of perceiving it. And therefore, we're seen that if our senses are not able even to perceive space, then how do we think they are going to be able to grasp God, who is infinitely subtler, infinitely minuter than even our senses? What to talk of our external senses, even our mind or intellect? And to illustrate this, why it is so, we had taken an analogy of a wall clock and a wristwatch. We had seen that wall clock and a wristwatch, they perform identical functions, and their parts are also more or less similar to each other. The manner in which they function is also very similar. Both of them have got similar, say, uh, hands of hour, minute, second, etc. And the mechanism which is used to make both the watches functional is also the same. Yet the tools that are used to handle, to assemble, to disassemble, to repair the wall clock cannot be used to do the same in case of wristwatch. Just because wristwatch is much smaller in comparison to the wall clock. Similarly, our senses are too gross to be able to perceive God, who is subtler than the subtlest that could exist, and therefore it finds itself simply unable to find God. And therefore, the Samaveda, it says very loudly that, oh, human beings, if you are indulging in an exercise to visualize the Supreme Soul, the Supreme Sovereign, that is God, by or with your hands, feet, your organs of excretion and reproduction, tongue, ears, skin, eyes, nose, mind, intellect, etc., then please mind that you are doing an exercise in futility because it's not going to bear fruits only because they are so gross in comparison to the God who they are trying to find out. So, therefore, it was established beyond doubt that it is not at all possible to see him or to realize him in his pure form outside. Now, the question that was left to be addressed, we will be looking at that in part 11, that is the present session. That if he cannot be seen outside, then that means that he must be seen inside. If it is not possible to find him outside in the first place, then we have to look within. Now the question that comes before us, that who will see him, how he will be seen, and where he will come into vision. Okay. We'll try to have a look, or we'll try to answer or understand this in the current episode. As we have seen, our senses are not in a position to see him because they are much grosser in comparison. Now, the question will be asked that what if not our senses, then what it is that could find him, that could see him? What is said here, that to see him, what is needed is something that has to be as subtle as God himself is. Okay, that is the tools, and we have seen in the case of watch, wristwatch, if we want to open, if we want to repair, disassemble a wristwatch, then the tools that are going to be needed have also to be finer or smaller or tinier accordingly. Similarly, if we are interested in finding God, who is the subtlest of all, then the tool that will be needed will also the medium that will be required. The thing that will be able to see him has also to be of an equal level of subtlety. Then what can be that something? What can be as subtle as God is? We have seen that nothing in the universe that exists or could exist at any point in future also could be as subtle as God, simply because God is all pervading, and that which is all pervasive has to be the minutest, has to be the subtlest. Only then it will be able to permeate through everything that exists. So therefore, that which could see him, that who could see him, what should be or what could be that? The answer will be nothing but the soul itself. The soul that each one of us is. Because why soul would be capable of seeing him, of finding him, of perceiving him, is because the soul is an ever inseparable part of the whole that we call as God. God is the whole and soul is its part. What type of part? Like, say, we take a piece of bread and break it into a number of pieces, and each piece is a part of the whole, the bread that was there earlier. Should we consider soul to be the part of God in a similar, in an identical fashion? The answer would be absolutely not. Because, as is said here, the soul is an ever inseparable part. It is never separated, even for the billionth or trillionth or quadrillionth of a second, howsoever small span of time, it is never separated from God. All the time it is connected, or rather we could say that the soul is the same as God. So when we say soul is an ever inseparable part, it means that it is as subtle as God, and therefore it is completely fit, fully fit or capable to perceive Him, to see Him, to find Him, to realize Him. As I said right now, that God is as a soul is an inseparable part. Again, can we find any, say, analogy of this in the world around us, in the universe that we inhabit? The answer would be yes. But again, let us remember that all these similes, all these examples, analogies, they are helpful only in as much as they are used to explain a particular concept or a particular dimension aspect of a concept. And therefore, we should not try to stretch those analogies to apply to different aspects that this particular analogy is not being used to explain. So now, could we find any such similarity in the universe as soul is an inseparable part of God? The answer will be yes. What is that? I think I have, say, included that in our, say, further slides, next slides. If it is not found, I'll come back to that. Now the question is that when we say that soul, that is each one of us, is capable of perceiving God, then another even bigger congruity comes to the fore. That if we if the soul can find him, perceive him, we ourselves are the soul. And yet, why we can't see him? We know God is all pervasive, God is everywhere, God is without outside us, God is within us, and the soul, that is we, are capable of seeing him, but yet we have never seen him. Why so? The answer is offered by one of the sants who has written the famous epic, that is the Ramcharitmanas, or more popularly known as Ramayana. He says that the eternally blissful soul, that is eternal because it is an inseparable part of, indivisible part of God. God is eternal, therefore soul is also eternal. God is all bliss, therefore soul is also all bliss. So the eternally blissful soul has fallen into the company of illusory, inert, and yet difficult to detach and painful veils, coverings, drapings of the various types of organs. Okay, that is the soul, which is the same as the Supreme Sovereign God. It has come to be covered, it has come to be draped with various types of organs and bodies. And therefore, just like if somebody blindfolds us, then we'll not be able to see the things that lie in front of us, even though we have eyes. Similarly, the soul, because it comes under the covering of multiple layers of bodies and organs, it is not in a position to see God. That is what it says. That is, though it is the same and indivisible part of the God, but in between its whole, that is Supreme Soul or God, and the soul, there are several layers of coverings. which keep it from seeing its whole. How? Same way as we find the space, the sky. Okay. Because we have seen that the analogy, there is one analogy which explains the relationship between soul and the supreme soul. What is that? That is of space. I am, shooting this video in one of my rooms of the house, of the home I live in. Now, this home, as you can see, has got this room has got four walls, it has got roof, ceiling, it has got floor, and a part of sky or space is included within these four walls and roof and floor. So this part of the space or sky that is, say, covered by the four walls is known as house sky or room space. And just outside the four walls of this room, there lies a larger space, a larger sky. Now, is there any relationship between the larger sky, that sky or space that lies outside this room, and the sky that has been, say, confined by these four walls and roof and floor? The answer would be yes. There is a very strong relationship between these two skies. And again, suppose now put a, I keep a pot, I keep a pot in the sky, which is included with Om Shri Sadguru Namaha. I'm very sorry for the interruption. First, I lost my network connectivity, and then when it was restored and I started talking, and after a few minutes, a prompt message I could see on my screen that I had been muted for the say about for past about 1 minute or so, and therefore whatever I talked for that period of time could not be audible. And then I discovered that my sharing also had been lost. So I think it's already about 20 minutes I had been speaking for. So what I will do that I'll just continue what say from where I had left for a few minutes, and then we'll call it a day for this particular episode, and then continue the discussion on this same topic in some of our future lectures. So. Uh, if I remember correctly, this much must have been audible to all of you that we were trying to find, say, an analogy between soul being part of the supreme soul, that is God, and space confined within the four walls and roof and floor of a particular building, and the outer larger sky that lies free. Is there any relationship between the room sky or the house sky or house space and the outer larger space? The answer would be yes. There is a very strong relationship. And then what I had discussed, that in the sky, in the space that is accommodated, that is trapped within the four walls of this room, if we keep another pot inside this space, then what will happen that within this pot there will be an even smaller part of space confined or trapped, and this sky will, the shape of the sky that is inside this pot or glass will appear different from the shape of the space that is say included within these four walls of the room than the shape of the outer larger sky. Now this difference creates an illusion as if these three skies or the spaces are also altogether different from each other, which is not true. Because as science would tell us that space is present not only within this pot, but it is present all through the walls of this glass also. Okay, so space is there inside, space is there within the within the walls of the glass. It is there outside in this room, and it is there even within the walls of this room, within the roof and floor of this room, and then there is a space which is outside, which lies outside, which is known as Mahad Akash. Mahad Akash. Mahad means large, and Akash means space. So larger sky or space outside, the space confined within the room, and the space confined within this glass. They all are inseparable from each other. They are completely one sky, and they only appear to be different. And from where that illusion comes, what is the cause of that illusion of these being three different skies are these trappings, these drapings, okay, these coverings, veils, layers, etc. And if I remove this glass, then the space that was confined by this, trapped within this glass, becomes free, and it merges. It even otherwise it was one with the sky in the room, but even that illusion now goes off the moment this glass is removed, and the space inside the, that is pot sky, becomes one with the room sky. And if we fell, okay, if we break these four walls of the room also, then what would happen? This house sky or room sky will become one with the larger sky. And they had been all through one only. But we had an illusion of them being different. Why so? Because of the coverings that came in, that appeared in between the outer sky and the inner sky. In the same way, the soul that are covered by different bodies, organs, etc., is ever connected, inseparably connected to the Supreme Soul that is God. But an illusion of separation, of distinction, is created because of these outward trappings or layerings or coverings or the veils or the drapes. Why this soul is not able to see the whole of which it is an inseparable part, it is because of these outer coverings or drapings. So what needs to be done so that the soul could experience what it is? It is an inseparable part of the God, of God. What it will have to do? It will have to remove all the outer drapings, all the veils that are keeping it covered, which creates an illusion of separation, of separateness. So what needs to be done, that all the coverings that are there on a particular portion of supreme sovereign, that is known as individual soul, they require to be removed. How that can be done? Okay, what are the difficulties that come in the way of that? Okay, how the soul is able to or will be able to remove all this, say, outer coverings, all these things we'll see in our future, say, lecture, in the next lecture. I'm again very, very sorry for the interruption. Uh, because of certain technical problems. When I finish this lecture of mine, I'll try to merge the two portions of the talks that had been given today, and I hope that you will bear with me for this technical glitch. We'll see each other very soon. in the next lecture, where we'll be continuing with where we have left the topic today. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Namaste, Radha Swami, Jai Guru, Vaheguru, Satyaram Sahab. Om.